All right, let's see if this is starting up. It does appear to be. Sweet. Let's make sure that it's running. All right, it's running. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today is a little bit different, if you can, or as you can see with the uh, video setup. I got some feedback a little bit ago about how it was not quite visible to see which view it was. So I've adjusted some things and moved things around so that way I can be a little bit more visible and show you all what's going on. Um, I've also got a new light setup, which is actually pretty cool. Um, when I've been cutting the stone, I've been wanting to be able to show you guys in better detail what specific cuts I'm doing and where on the stone. And it sometimes can be a little difficult to do that with the standard lighting setup that I've had. So I ended up going to Home Depot and picking up just a standard LED type multi-changeable color light bulb that allows me to then actually change the light on the fly to be either warmer, cooler, or even a different color. Right now, the light that I've got currently on is actually blue, which allows you to be able to kind of see some of the facets that are on the pavilion, which is a little bit different than before and how I'd had it set up. So I can actually give you a quick demonstration. Um, got my phone here, and on the phone I can actually come over here and adjust the color, and you might be able to see on my on the video there that the stone is now changing colors. The light itself allows me to go any color on the rainbow, so I can do green, blue, red, orange, anything really. But I found that this blue tone has a good color, or is a good type of color to show the individual facets there, um, other than your standard white, warm white, or whatnot. So, um, so that out of the way, it's I've done a little bit of adjustments on some of the on the stone, and not really wanting to show how much has been going on because it's just a lot of time that's very little things are changing. So I have actually, between the last video and this video, polished up a couple of the sides of the stone. Um, but again, it was a really long process in getting things put back together. I also had an issue with my machine where unfortunately some water got on the circuit board and shorted it out for a little bit. So I had to take the whole machine apart, put it all back together, and things just don't kind of line up right when you do that. So I had to recalibrate, re-go in and figure out exactly where I was planning or where I was before to be able to get back to the proper cut. Um, so with that out of the way, I will show you what I've done so far. So if you're looking at the bore scope, you can see that now on this gem, the corner facets are now polished as well as most of the side facets. The one that's passing right now, that I'm going to kind of show, it's got a little bit of scratches still, but it's not horrible. Most of that's going to get cut away anyway, so it's not going to really be that visible. Um, so yeah, now all of these sides are polished, as you can see. So now we can go on to the next step. So this next set of facets for the pavilion is called the P4 facets. Basically, that's the fourth set of facets that are being cut. In this case, there's only 4 cuts within this, but it's changed from a 90-degree cut to a 60-degree cut, so or thereabouts. So I'm gonna have to set that up real quick so I can show y'all what's going on, and then we're good to go. So in this case, I gotta shut this. I'm going to remove this and adjust the head here to be out of the way. I'm also going to have to adjust the camera a little bit, but that's okay. So we're going to go from 90 to, actually it's a little about 60 and a half, technically. I'm just going to do 60 because I can consistently get back to that. Okay, so now as you can see, it's no longer directly a 90-degree type cut. It's now a 60-degree cut, so more at an angle. I'm going to lower this down a bit. I'm going to readjust my bore cam. In this case, since it's a bit higher, I got to adjust the bore cam to show more of this kind of a look. Oh. This holder I have for the bore cam is actually really nice. I picked it up from a laboratory supply company. It wasn't cheap, but it makes sure that it holds the unit, and it can go in 3 dimensions, any dimension, to hold the bore cam at whatever degrees I want it, so that way I can actually move it around on the fly and not have to worry about adjusting things. It also lets me be able to adjust the focus here, so that way I can actually change the focus on the fly as well, which then makes it easier to show what's going on. So I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm ready to get this going. But before I do, there's one more thing. I think I'm actually going to pull this back just a smidge more. Probably right around there. Okay, using the camera on my laptop to be able to see what I'm doing. There we go. So now I can kind of show things up close. There, just like that. Perfect. So now I can show what it's going to look like when I cut it. It's a little bit lower than the cut itself, so you'll be able to see the angles of the cut, which is pretty useful. So now I've got that set to 60. That's our next cut. We're going to start off on a 96. Right here. All right. So in this case, now we're going to be starting to do some of the additional pavilion cuts, and these additional pavilion cuts are one of a series of extra pavilion cuts that makes the gem kind of taper into like a cone. It's still a sharp point at the bottom, but it's more of a smoothed and gradual curve rather than a sharp point like you're seeing now currently. So in this case, we're doing the P4. So I'm just going to cut this down, and we should be good to go. I got to cut to P2 and P3 girdles, which means that basically, if you're looking on the bore cam here, there is, so this facet right here is the large facet on the girdle. And basically what I'm doing is I'm matching the top right here on this side facet across and to the other side facet at the top. So it's not going to cut off very much, but just enough to kind of flatten it off and make the girdle a full band around the edge of the stone. So without further ado, I'm going to take out the polishing lap that I have here and then move back over to my 600 grit, because we're actually going to be cutting right now. We're not going to be polishing. I was only doing the polish for the girdle just because it can tend to be a little easier to do it that way, especially after you just get done cutting the girdle itself. Oh man, this one is a. Sometimes these are not easy to get off because gets water in between it. Might be able to see it on this camera. See the water, and it ends up tending to create like a suction on the back of the polishing laps. Same thing with some of the cutting laps as well. I also was able to um, uh, put in a new type of um, water catcher here around the edge. I use this water catcher, it's the blue right here on the main camera. This blue kind of like scratching pad. The reason I do it is when you're cutting the girdle, this window right here, there can be a lot of water that escapes from the centrifugal force of the disc going around in circles. And so this actually catches a lot of that water before it gets out here, so it keeps me a little bit drier, and it keeps the water from getting all over the place on the machine itself. The dial for the controls is just below this window right here, so you don't really want too much water getting on that. So I'm actually going to take this out because I don't need it currently. Since I have the, or I'm going to be cutting the no longer at a 90-degree angle, I can shut this little window right here, and that will end up keeping most of the water out, and I don't have to worry about it. So let me see. Please also let me know if you are hearing any music. I'm trying to make sure that I do not stream any music due to copyright reasons, but I am listening to music as it can get a little bit monotonous when you don't have anything to do other than cut the stone. So grab this 600. So again, I'm pulling back out the 600 lap. This is just a standard Topper 600 grit. That's slightly impregnated with, I believe this is a diamond coating. Not exactly sure what type or anything. It was just a cheapy lap I got off of Amazon to be able to cut the stones. The cutting part doesn't matter as much as the polishing does. If you get a cheap polishing lap, you're going to get a cheap polish. But if you get a cheap cutting lap, you're still going to be able to cut anyway. So yeah, it might be a little bit more coarse. It might not be as perfect of a cut as it would be if you bought something more expensive. But again, I'm still learning. This is kind of my way of testing how things work and to be able to see if I want to continue doing this or not. So, alright, so we got the 600 on here. So I am now going to lower the stone so that way it is just barely touching. And I want on my dial here to be just below 0. On the dial, if you're at 0 when it comes to cutting, on this physical dial, you would end up having a perfect to whatever degree to whatever you've set the hard stop to on the machine. In this case, that's a little bit different in this case than when you're polishing, because polishing you're at 90 degrees anyway, so you're just trying to get, or at whatever degrees you're cutting at anyway, and you're trying to get close to the degree that you cut, but it doesn't always have to be perfectly to that cut, because you're just wanting to make sure you clean off all of the blemishes from the cutting medium rather than the actual polish. Okay, so now we're going to start. Okay, I've also cleaned out my water supply here. That is off to the side. It was a little bit coated with calcium, and now it's got a much better flow through the little PVC tube here. And it's much easier to adjust the water flow. Okay, now we're going to start. Alright. I'm going to adjust this camera view just a smidge. Let's get like right about there. Hands are a little shaky too because I just drank a bunch of coffee, which is never exactly the best thing to do when you're trying to do something precise as cutting a gemstone. However, I probably should have planned that out a little better before I did, but I didn't, so it'll just be kind of something that unfortunately I will ask you to bear with me on. So I'm also going to turn down this light that I have over here to the right. I can leave it on, but just turn it down. There we go. So now you can kind of see I'm starting to cut right here. This section right here that's getting cut is going to match so that way you have this corner right here and this corner right here having a flat cut across them. And I'm still not happy with this camera view. Let's see if I can get it better. There we go. That's better. So there you can see the top just above the polished part is where I'm starting to cut, cutting down to meet those other two girdle facet corners. Now since this is just a cutting, or is a cutting pass, I'm going to do this fairly carefully on the first facet because I want to make sure that I don't overcut. And then on the second and third, I'm just going to match the degree that I cut to on the first, and that should get me close enough to then do the fine tuning by eye. Okay, that's coming off nicely. Alright. Okay, we're getting fairly close now. So now you can see how that's slowly coming out a bit nicer. Let me see if I can turn up this light a little. There we go. So you can now see that that corner of the cut, oh, let me grab my middle part. This corner of the cut is now almost to that corner right there. And that's going to be the same way on this side because it mirrors. Okay. Nearly there. Okay, so got a slight drop. Okay, at this point, I am just about dead on. You can see now how that new facet there is just below There we go. Right there. So we're almost in the corner there. On the other side, we're actually at the corner, so I'm going to have to cheat a little. And apply just a smidge extra on that one side. There we go. So now at this point we should have a even facet on both sides. And that looks right as about as flat as it can be. So at this point now, I can take this side that I cut. It's set perfectly at 0 on my dial, this dial indicator right here. So now, as long as I change the index on the skier here to the next desired index for the P4 series, I can just cut to that 0 degree that I just did on this one, and then all the other 3 will now match. So at this point, I just need to switch over. So I did the 96 index, and I'm going to jump over to the 24, which will be just above right here. This is the one that was scratched, so this will hopefully pull off a lot of the scratches when I cut it. There might be some I'll have to work out later, but that's going to be something I'll probably do towards the end of this cut of the stone. Now this one's going to cut a lot quicker because now I know where I'm going, what degree I'm going to. So I'm going to keep going. Alright, so you can see this one cut a lot quicker now that I know exactly where I'm trying to go to. And already that scratch is gone, which is excellent. So that means I do not have to re-polish again, which is nice. Okay, at this point I'm now close enough on the dial to want to verify more with my eyes than with the dial itself. Okay. So we're almost there. You can barely see there's a tiny bit of a step there. Now we're basically at the mark. I'm going to check that right side to polish a smidge, so I'm going to cheat just a smidge. What I mean by cheating is you can, there's an adjustment knob, the silver knob on the side of the machine that actually allows you to cheat the angle, so it will cut one side a little bit more than the other side. I'm not actually using that knob. I know, or my specific machine has a little bit of slop in it, and I can either push to the left or the right side of the index selection lever, and it'll force the wheel to turn a little bit more or less to the left or right, which allows me to cut more on the left side of the stone or the right side of the stone, depending on which way I push. So I'm kind of cheating using that because I know kind of where center is and how much I can push to cut off just a smidge more on that other side. There we go. So at this point, I'm barely having to touch and it's cutting quite a bit. So if you look now, you can see that facet is now all the way across. And the nice thing about it too is that there is still that tiny bit of a scratch that I was trying to cut out right there, but it's going to be so close to the actual edge of the stone that by the time I polish the edge of the stone, it'll be very hard to see. At least that's the hope. And it won't require me to come back and recut out that little bit of scratch and then repolish over. Okay, so now that we've finished with the 24 index, we're going to go over to the 48 index. Again, it starts off like this, and we're going to cut down to match the P3 girdle facet and the P2 girdle facet, which is the wide girdle part and the little narrow corner girdle parts. Okay, already able to get rid of quite a bit there. Alright, it's coming together quite nicely. Where it is. There we go. Oh, I went almost a little too far there. I'm glad that I was careful. Okay, so at this point, just gotta cheat just a smidge on that left side now, because the right side is perfect. Okay, just a smidge more. Go a smidge more. I can still barely see a little bit there that I'm not quite happy with. There we go. Alright, so now we're done with this side already. As you can see, on my side it would be right. Yeah, it would be right on your side too. So the right side here is lined up at that corner, as well as the left side right here on that corner as well. Now I'm going to jump over from the 48 index to the last one, which is the 72 index, and finish this off. Now, I'm not applying very much pressure at all, just light enough for my hand to basically do most of the work, just the weight of my hand. You don't really want to do very much more than that, otherwise you could potentially break the super glue bond on the stone right here. This is just super glue, so it can break fairly easy if you apply too much pressure. Excuse me. Alright, we are almost there. Okay, again, the left side on my side is lower than the right, so I'm going to need to cheat a smidge. Okay, that's good level. There we go. I think that's pretty close. Well, it might actually need a little bit more on this side. There we go. Alright, so now we have this pretty shape where you have the girdle that's completely, I'll turn this off, where the girdle is completely polished, but the pavilion top part is all that matte type of just cut. This case, this is looking pretty good. Everything is fairly even. Let me see if I can get that focus a little bit better. Oh my gosh, my hands are so shaky. No, that's too much. There we go. So now all of those are lined up, so you have a flat top girdle, which would actually be the bottom of the girdle if you have the stone upside down in the correct orientation. So that will end up being a nice line right there, and that's going to be more or less the finalized band of the stone. The only other thing that's of course got to happen is polishing off each of these cuts that I've just did, so that it's as clear as the girdle is currently. Alright, so that is actually the end of the P4. So what I might do is start on P5. Meet P1, P4, okay. Yeah, P5, okay, got it. So this actually will make the angle more at the top of the stone. It's going to make it more, instead of more of a pyramid or a perfect pyramid, it's going to kind of bow it just a smidge like this. It'll still keep the top point, or cullet as it's called, to be nice and sharp, but it's going to make the end of the stone look more like this, well, more like this rather than this. So, and this one actually has a series of cuts. It's an 8 cut, and we're changing to a 41, almost 42 degree degree angle on the actual stone. So I'm going to start off with that. Since it is so close, it's like 41.97. It's like, oh my gosh. I'm just going to do 42, which will not have that big of an effect on it. Alright, so there we go. A little bit more of a deep angle than the prior one. And on this one, this is now P5 that we're cutting. P5 is 03. 03, 21, 27, 45, 51, 69, and yada yada. So we're just going to keep going with that. And the way that they're telling me to cut this is cut to the center point, meet P1, P4. So P1 is just your standard. Oh, I gotta readjust this now. Oh, I want it to be right here, probably. There we go. And get to focus. Alright, there we go. So P1 is going to be any of these just straight triangle pieces right here on the top. Let me see if I can change the color just a smidge to make that a little bit more viewable. It's pink. Yellow doesn't seem to do it. No. It's too much. This greenish yellow does a pretty good job of showing it, so we're going to do that. And I can readjust the focus. There we go. So that should hopefully make it look a little bit more viewable. So basically what I'm going to be doing is cutting on these corners right here. I'm going to be meeting this top of this facet, which is the P4 facet that we just cut, and the P1 facets up here, depending on which index the design calls for. So I'm actually going to be starting off opposite side of where you can see right now, which is over here. I don't think I can get a great view of that. Let's see if I can. Oh, come on. There we go. I'm gonna loosen this ring up. Let it spin a little bit. Man, I am very shaky tonight. There we go. That should be a little bit more viewable. So now, this side is where I'm going to actually start on, right here. And this side has a little bit more view. I'm going to keep fiddling with this. I can probably get something better. Might be able to spin this base around. Oh. Oh my gosh, everything's going haywire. It's actually a fairly good shot too. Sorry, technical difficulties here. There we go. There we go. Let's get this back to bluer color. There we go. Turn down the intensity just a smidge. And turn off this light. We can leave that one on, just turn it down. Oh, that way washed it out. This video is going to kind of be a little bit of me playing around and figuring out how this will work out better. Let me see if I can get this to focus. Adjust the lighting. It's interesting too, because certain colors like completely wash it out, as you can see, and other colors don't do it justice. So I don't know. There's a lot of nuance to how this works. Let's see if I can just do a yellow. Oh, that's too bright. I think it's the the interesting thing about it is what you're able to see right now is actually a good indication of how the stone is going to start refracting, because right now I barely have this light on. Like, I can actually show you. Like it's a very warm and muted color. Um, so the fact that you're seeing what you're seeing now, just with that much light, gives you an idea of how much already the stone is retaining its light when it's shown into it. Which is great. It's great to be able to see. It just sucks to be a viewer who's trying to watch it because you can't really see very well. um, so at this point, I might just be able to bring it closer to the camera. That's probably what I'm just going to have to do. There we go. Yeah, I'm just going to bring it closer to the camera, that way y'all can see. And this might actually give me enough to show you, almost. You can see that facet right there is what we're going to be cutting on next. Okay, I'm going to stop futzing around with cameras and go on to the next cut. Oh, before I do this though, did I set it right? Yes, I did. Okay. Also going to, no, I'm not going to. Actually, yes, I am going to. Gotta move this up because we're so close now. We have to change some things. Which means I gotta change camera views again. There we go. It's good enough for now. Okay, so now I'm going to begin cutting. So I'm just going to quickly check my work as I'm going because I want to make sure I do not overcut here. Okay, I see what we're doing. We're just cutting to P4. Okay, so alright, so here you may be able to see now. So see how this is now a triangle at the top? I'm trying to get this triangle right here, right at the end of my stick there, to match all the way down to that point right there, that meet point. 1, 2, 3, okay. Alright, so I've basically got that. Actually do this. I know I said I was going to stop messing with it, but I just can't stop. It's so fun. So now you should be able to see that new triangle piece right there that is now matching up. Let's see if I can adjust the color. There we go. So basically, this new flat side right here is the cut that I just did. You'll be able to see it next. Excuse me. On the next one. Okay. So there we go. That triangle part is the new cut. Oh, I forgot to set this to for the other facets.